Thank you, TikTok, Kathy and Gohuwei. That was really exciting stuff. That Effect House. The more people that have access to toolkits like that, the more totally rad AR experiences we can get out there. So I'm a fan. And cat face tracking. All right. A little bit about me. I'm Alex Goldberg. I work for Blue Origin. I lead, me and my team, we lead AR for the manufacturing of space vehicles and some of our orbital habitats and other exciting things that we have coming down the pike. I've been passionate about XR probably since, God, like 2010 or 2011. I used to work in the game industry, so it's great to be here in the game dev track room. And I'll be your host the rest of the day. So there's a little bit about me. And I'm actually presenting on Friday. So as I said, I work for Blue, and we're kind of tight-lipped with the kind of information we release. So I'm doing a fun talk on spatial computing concepts from the movies that we grew up with, and that'll be Friday morning. Maybe you'll want to check that out. Okay. Next up, we have Tory Smith from Niantic. I'm very excited about their recent Eighth Wall acquisition, and I'm a huge fan of WebXR, and let's hear it for Tory.
Thank you. Oh, yep, that microphone is on. All right, I wonder what's going to happen when I press this button. That is relief. Okay. Hey, everyone. My name is Tory Smith. I am a product manager at Niantic. I am responsible for VPS, or our Visual Positioning System, which we just launched, exactly a week ago? Yeah, it's been 1 week. Wow. A little bit about us. Niantic is probably best known for being the creator of Pokemon Go. And in the time hence, that came out, I guess, Brian, 6 years ago? 7 years ago? It's been out for a minute. And one of the more recent and exciting things that we've been working on Niantic over the past couple years is taking a lot of the lessons that went into creating that, as well as a lot of our other games like Ingress, Pikmin Bloom, and some other ones that are just now being teased a little bit, is turning a lot of the same tools that we use to build these games internally into tools that developers could use. So Niantic as a company is kind of organized into two pieces. We have our game studios that create games that we play, and then we have a whole platform team. And one of the most exciting things about our platform team over the past 6-7 months is we have released what is called the Lightship platform, which is a Unity SDK that now developers can use to build their own AR experiences. And most recently, we launched the Lightship ARDK in November. It was also discussed a lot here at AWE back in November. And then last week, we launched VPS, so the Visual Positioning System for our Lightship platform. So what that is the ability to take content and author and render AR content at real-world locations, and a whole bunch of different locations in seconds with like centimeter level accuracy. And why this is important is a lot of AR experiences today are kind of ephemeral. Like if you go into a space, you have an experience, you can do things like semantic segmentation, you can understand occlusion, you can do detection of objects, face tracking, stuff like that. But when you create that experience, it doesn't stay there when you walk away. One of the nice things about the real world is when you change it in a way, you can share that with other people in a way that persists. So there's this concept of persistence, which means that the same content can be enjoyed by different people and at different times. And Lightship VPS is a really critical piece for that because it allows us to understand the context of both exactly what you're looking at, exactly where your eyeball or your camera lens is, as well as exactly where you are looking. And if you understand that, then that gives you the reference that you need in order to create these really immersive experiences that are tied to real-world locations, and the imagination of our developers is really the only thing that limits what you can do with that. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about just the gist of how this works, and then we actually have 3 of our earliest customers that have built beautiful, incredible experiences on it, and I would just love to facilitate just sort of a discussion about some of the new opportunities that this unlocks and what other potential developers for our platform will be able to build with it. So I'll start with just sort of teasing just 30 seconds of like a couple of the first things our developers have built, and I'll talk about like a little bit about how this works, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. And I'm not getting volume, and that's, oh, now I am, we're good. So what you are seeing there is a lot of experiences that you could create just by using things like building segmentation, sky segmentation, plane segmentation, plane detection, occlusion. However, those same experiences just can be activated and will start to happen just by you sort of looking at that area, and then we're able to localize you, which again means understanding exactly where you are to within a couple centimeters and with like a couple degrees of the vector of your eyeball, which is really neat. There's a lot of location-based experiences that already exist today, like if you're just walking around and navigating with Google Maps or Apple Maps, or if you're playing Pokemon Go or Ingress, for example, we're able to know roughly where you are to within like a couple meters. But if you wanted to render an object that is like perfectly perched exactly where you left it, like if I leave an apple on a bench and I want that apple to still be there for someone else to find later, or like a note, I need to be able to know exactly how that piece of content is anchored in the world. So that's where VPS comes in. And in order to make this work, there's sort of three pillars. So this is pretty critical. VPS you can really think of as infrastructure. So Visual Positioning System is all the way over on the right, but this can only work with all three pillars. And the first is really about data collection and processing. So we have a bunch of tools that I'll talk just a little bit about how this data collection and processing works. Anyone here who's played Ingress or Pokemon Go, you've probably seen the opportunity to do missions that are like, hey, go to this location and scan it. Effectively, what you are doing is recording a series of image frames, and then each of those is not just an image frame, but we also have some of the information about the tracking state and like how your camera has moved through space. And very similarly to how a human brain would admire like a sculpture as you walk around and look at it from different angles, you understand how your head is moving and you understand what you see as you're moving around. This step of like collecting all these frames and the relation with one another is like really critical. So we have collected over the years millions and millions and millions of these scans at these real world locations, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. So there's a bunch of data collection and processing, cleaning, anonymization, following best practices in industry for privacy and all of that. That's sort of the first pillar, is the collection piece. Second pillar is map building. So I was talking about as we collect this data, every frame has an associated location that we sort of track relative to wherever you are. So in this particular case, there's this little monolith outside one of our offices in Washington. And as the person is holding their device and just sort of walking around it and scanning it, we're understanding the relative pose or position, location, orientation between each frame as that person sort of walks around. And in this map building process, when we say map building, it's very different from sort of a traditional map. If you imagine like someone like laying a big blueprint over like a drafting table or something like that, it's more of like a mapping, as in there's an input that needs to generate an output. And in this case, the way VPS works is your input is this is what I'm seeing right now and this is where I am. And then the output is, okay, this is your exact position and orientation in space. So the output of the VPS service is not sending you back content. It's not sending you back an image. It's actually just telling you exactly where you are in 6 degrees of freedom, so XYZ, yaw, pitch, roll, in the world relative to that location. So that is sort of the mapping that we are building. And this just involves something I can only describe as like black magic. It's a really, really incredible technology that is effectively a really cool application of deep learning that can give you that piece of information back from a single query image in any location, which is critical because this is going to be something that just runs on a device with a data connection, and we're able to do this with a quite small payload. So just a single low-resolution image is good enough to get us within like a couple centimeters. So that's what the map building process looks like. It's taking all the scans from the first pillar and then turning those into maps at real-world locations. And now we can finally get to the fun part, which is VPS, the Visual Positioning System. So what's happening in this final step is we run this as a service. So if you are using our Lightship ARDK, you can call VPS at any activated location. When I say activated, that just means it's a location at which the VPS service is available. As I was saying, you can think of VPS as like a lot like infrastructure. So basically, if you go to a location and it's VPS activated, it's kind of like a location that has Wi-Fi. To sort of build on that analogy a little bit. And if you have a location that has that, then you can connect to it. And then instead of getting an internet connection, we're basically giving you your exact location in the spatial computing space of the Lightship platform. So what the VPS service enables is an experience like the one in this far right frame, where this was enabled with just one scan. So this person submitted one scan, pillar 1, we built the map, pillar 2, and then once it's activated, which can happen like in a couple hours, now this experience, anyone goes here with their application and just looks at the space, we can localize them closely enough that they can like walk into this world, and you can see all of this content can just be rendered so that it stays in place as they sort of walk around and like look around this portal. And once they pass through it, it plays like this cool like pulsing effect. And once you're inside there, you can create this entire location-based experience that can be for one person, can be for multiple people. It will still be there tomorrow. There's a ton of challenges that we're still working on, but this is sort of like one of the first, like in my opinion, really cool applications of this technology. So again, these are sort of like the 3 pillars of what makes this possible. And as someone with a background in maps and games, I really do have my dream job in terms of getting to work on this. But something I preach a lot is this really is an infrastructure problem. It's very similar to like setting up the first like fiber network or setting up the first like gigabit or 5G coverage. So what we're really focused on doing, because it's expensive and building maps is kind of Sisyphean, like if we had a perfect map of the world today, it would be great for today, and then there'd be a construction site or a new business would open or a business would close or they'd build a bridge. The world is constantly changing, which is why it's really critical for us to now invite. We obviously have millions and millions of players of our games that submit scans that have allowed us to build these initial maps, but the job is never done. So what we're focused on right now is actually looking to see like where do we have the most players, where do we have the most developers, and where are there the most people that could potentially access this content. And one exciting thing about the Lightship platform is it already is supported by billions and billions of devices. And inviting our developers on board as well to build within these experiences is going to allow us to get very quick coverage. But in terms of the things that we're focused on first is to activate, so again, make locations available on the Lightship VPS service as many locations as possible so that our developers will have access and to be able to start building. So we announced last week we were specifically focused on 6 launch cities. So San Francisco, Seattle, Los Angeles, New York, London, and Tokyo. Each of those locations today has ballpark 5,000 locations where you can go and localize with Lightship VPS and build persistent AR experiences. So again, persistence means that if you build an experience once, different people can go have that same experience at different times and even see the same things at the same times. And this is one of like the really critical building blocks to making sort of the real world metaverse a reality. Just quick caveat here, like these are 6 cities where we've specifically focused and like really invested a lot, including even sending out like a surveying team to make sure that we really achieve critical density in a lot of really important areas where we have lots of players, lots of developers. This is not an exhaustive list. There are dozens of other cities that we are also turning on, and we announced last week we will have at least 100 global cities will have VPS coverage by the end of this year. One other exciting thing that we've made available just to help our developers iterate more quickly and to also like shed some more light on how our system works is our new Wayfarer app. So if you've played any of our games, you've probably noticed a lot of our games have specific locations or points of interest that we call wayspots. And wayspots are publicly accessible, notable locations that are conducive to our mission of shared exploration. So different locations, like for this example, this is just a place in my neighborhood. It's just a cool historic building called Rose Court. And this is a location that we had enough scans collected so that we could activate that on VPS. So what we're showing here and what's now possible with the Wayfair app, which is now available for any of our developers, is you have a single application that you can use to explore, find these locations, which are a lot of the same locations that would show up in Pokemon Go or Ingress or Pikmin Bloom. And you can see where those locations are, you can submit additional scans, and then for any location that's been activated, you can actually localize on VPS just to verify that works. And that sort of gives you the confirmation that if you did want to craft an experience at this location, you would be able to serve that experience as part of your game. The other cool thing that you can do with this application is it allows you to activate what we call like a private location. So like let's say you're sitting at your desk and you want to iterate on an AR experience, but you don't want to have to like walk around in your city or find the nearest location that is activated on the VPS service. You can actually just like scan your couch or like scan your patio and sort of use that as your sandbox for development. So this application also facilitates that. So that's just a quick overview of some of the things that we announced last week. One other like great piece of news, now that VPS is in public beta, I'm happy to say that it is completely free to use during our public beta. So for probably at least the next 6 months, anyone can download it and start using it. And frankly, the thing I am most excited about is what our developers will do with it, because we will learn so much from them during that time. And without any further ado, I actually want to invite 3 of our customers, developers, partners, on stage to do some Q&A with everybody. So I want to introduce first John Wong from Foundry 6. Come on up. And then Shirley Layer from, oh, sorry, I had AR House, full-time creator, yeah, Learn. And then Brian Rose, who's a producer for Ingress. And actually, before we jump into questions, we'd love for each of you to just tell us a few words about who you are, where you're from, and what you're building.
Cool, I can start. Hey everyone, I'm John. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Foundry 6. We've been using VPS for the past few months. We were especially excited because we heard about VPS at the Lightship launch last November. But yeah, we built an experience for the Lightship Summit last week. It involves, Kraken spawning out of the water fountain, and also we put dragons in the skyline, and we were so excited to see that, the persistence and accuracy was there every single time. But yeah, excited to be here to share my experience, any challenges we face, and tips for VPS.
Cool. Is it on? Okay, cool. So my name's Shirley Layer. I go by Shirley Creates online. And basically, I have a background in like design and visual effects, but I've always been really interested in immersive and experiential experiences. And so that kind of got me into augmented reality. And I have this character named Sketch, basically, who goes out in the real world. And what I like is to get people from like A to B. And so he kind of leads you into the real world, and you're able to interact with, the grass or the sky, and be able to like learn different things depending on the area that you're in. So that's kind of where I'm at, and we were at the AR House developing with VPS last month. So. Cool.
And I'm Brian Rose. I'm the senior producer on Ingress. Ingress is Niantic's very first real-world game. So it's a game about territory control. We're also a kind of scouting party within the company. So we're often the first team to do things like portal scanning, our new meshing feature, integrating with Lightship ARDK. Just this past weekend, we had millions of scans coming in from our Ingress players going out and helping us map the world. So what we're doing now is trying to close the loop between those pillars that Tory mentioned of the mapping, the building out of this visual positioning system, and Ingress players are helping make that possible.
Cool. Thank you all so much for the introductions. Antony, unfortunately, had something even more important today. He is potentially having a baby like right now. So we wish him the best. But thank you so much, John, for joining us. Cool. The first question I wanted to ask everybody is, what is, for you, like sort of a dream experience that you would like to see unlocked with AR?
I can go first. So I think for me, I'm actually not like a huge gamer, but I love like going hiking and biking and doing all of these like activities that kind of trick me into working out, but it's really fun. So I want to have experiences where like your daily life is gamified. It's like you're going on a quest and like you're a character, but you're literally a character in the real world. And so like instead of just leveling up in a game, you're actually leveling up in like real life. So that's kind of like what I would like to see. And so there's, if you're starting from home and you go to like a park or some sort of tourist attraction, you can learn more about the thing that you're going to. So that's kind of like what I would see.
Yeah, and for me, it's the same of encouraging people to go out there in the real world. I think that's some common trait that you'll see just across everyone building on top of the Niantic Lightship platform. But really, it's the real world social component. So connecting people together, helping them make friends, helping them figure out, find their new best friend, their significant other, those kind of things. I think if you find a way that you can connect people based on some common interests, like we both like this game together, you'll probably also really quickly figure out that we also both like Star Wars or the Dodgers or whatever it is. So yeah, my dream experience is one that connects people in the real world.
Cool. My dream experience is actually what we're building right now, and VPS plays a key part in it. We want to be able to have the location environment play a key role in either the game mechanic or the storyline. So for example, we're building it right now. We're super excited. Like you walk to the forest and then you see like an interesting trunk to be scanned. And after scanning it, an ogre pops up from behind a tree and everything is consistent and looks like it's interacting with the real environment. But one really cool thing that I'm excited about is imagine like, sea creatures start emerging from the pond. And with VPS, you can have like really high accurate, persistent, as well as confining the restrictions of these monsters to that pond. So I think this just unlocks like a new level of game mechanics and storytelling that wasn't possible before. So.
Cool. I actually want to talk a little bit more about the real world element. So for each of the things that you all have been working on, why is AR what you're focused on as opposed to VR? Actually, why don't you start, John? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, so why is it AR that you're interested in for building these experiences as opposed to VR?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, one key thing for me is during the development process with AR, Niantic VPS, my step counter increased by like 3-folds. So I think, one aspect is you're able to create really cool experiences, but the health benefits are actually substantial as well. Yeah.
Shirley?
Yeah, for me, it's funny. VR is actually what got me into AR. And so, again, I'm not a huge gamer, but I like having fun and working out and not feeling that I'm working out. And so I started working out in VR using like Supernatural and all of these things, and I actually ended up losing like 30 pounds. And so I got like some of my family involved, and like collectively we lost like 150 pounds. Wow. So I thought that was really interesting, and I thought like, oh, I'm gonna make a VR experience. And then I realized how difficult, because I'm not a coder, and when I went in Unity, I just couldn't figure it out. And so that's when I got into AR, and I found a lot of no-code-based solutions. And then I was able to kind of get some of my ideas out there and figure things out. And for me, it's a matter of I'm a workaholic, and I'm constantly behind the screen. So I don't want to like go work out behind a screen. I would rather get out into the real world. And so I think that AR can unlock that, especially if it's something that you already do. Like if you're already hiking and biking and doing all of these things, it's still something that you're doing, but now it's just more interesting. And then when you get to a specific location, there could be an even greater experience to talk about like where you're visiting. There's a bunch of like hiking trails, and when you go to them, they have plaques. But the plaques are usually old and deteriorated, the information's gone. But if you can turn it into an AR experience, I think that it would attract more people and get people outside for longer periods of time.
Yeah. So for me, like I think VR can be really, really immersive, very cool. I think what drew me to AR specifically, like I was talking with some friends, and one of them had this idea of like the real world just sucks, and that's why I love VR. And I feel like the real world's pretty cool. Like there's a lot of great things of being able to like connect with another person, give them a hug, go out to see sexy Shrek at the Eiffel Tower or whatever it is that you might want to do. But I think one big part of it was VR was always trying to push this idea of these really immersive room scale experiences. And I felt like with AR, you have planet scale experiences, and this idea of actually like Ori talked about trying to save the world. I think you can do that through XR. It's going to be some combination of the tech, but really, at the end of the day, the tech doesn't matter. It's really about the experiences that you create, the feelings that you instill in your player or your user. So that's what drew me to the AR side. Was it just felt, I don't know, good karma.
Next thing I wanted to ask is thinking about how VPS changes like what you can do with AR, so the ability to have like location context. What does that mean for the experiences that each of you are working on?
I guess, yeah. I think going back to like, again, I love going out. I love traveling. I love exploring. And I think that if we can add more context to the places that we're exploring in, and even if it's like a building and there's a character that's jumping off of the building because it understands the geometry and you're relative to that point, it makes people want to go. And so it's a great way. I live in a small town in Clarksville, Tennessee, just 200,000 people. We have a bunch of local businesses, and I think that creating experiences that can get people, generating traffic, is very valuable, and it helps both the community and it helps both the small business owners. And I just think that being able to gamify something that we already do and providing more context in those locations is just, it's never been done before. So this is an opportunity.
This is actually like to go back to like the VR point. So I used to work on Google AR and VR, and then with Google Expeditions, it was like field trips for kids, virtual field trips. And one of the things I noticed was like looking out at a classroom, kind of like this. You have all your kids with the Google Cardboard, and they're all seeing some kind of really cool magic school bus experience, but they're all like looking in different directions at different things and learning different things at different times. And then when we pivoted towards AR, and you had a model of the solar system in the room, and everyone's using their Tango device or their whatever the tablet was, but everyone was seeing the same thing at the same time, and it was this shared experience. Everyone was in it together. You had people, you had the little kids kind of looking over each other's shoulders and like pointing and laughing at different things that they were all having at the same time, that shared moment. And I feel like if you brought that to everyone, you pulled that into the real world, to kind of take an example from a physical thing, like Disneyland is a really cool place, happiest place on earth. But could you make Clarksville, Tennessee more Disneyland-like? Could you pull some of those things that would actually get people to go visit these small towns, do that 5-mile hike, go to that lighthouse? Like that's the kind of stuff that I get super excited about. And so that's how I think we can start using VPS, is creating persistent shared experiences in these places in the real world. The other part is also one thing that we're looking at for Ingress is a different angle or different use case for VPS, where VPS lets you know basically through visual confirmation that the player is where they say they are. So we have a challenge in Ingress where we use your GPS lat long to say, player is here at this location. They're at Santa Clara Convention Center. Your GPS can be spoofable. It's harder to spoof or kind of fake that visual confirmation. And so one of the things we're also exploring is with that crowdsourced map, this 3D map of the world that we have, if you're checking basically the mesh against VPS to confirm the player is where they say they are, then maybe we can give that player more rewards, or we have higher confidence that they really are there at that place at that time. So looking at it from both angles, both can we play something as a shared experience, and then also can we confirm they are where they say they are?
Cool. For our team, what we're most excited about VPS is the persistent aspect of it. Like having creatures look like they're actually interacting with the real world environment is kind of an aha moment. And the other aha moment was the social component of it, where after they defeat the monster in our experience, they could leave notes and trophies for other players to see. And to be able to give hints and context relative to what was placed next to it, it's pretty funny because you're essentially telling a funny joke or story relative to what's like seen on the camera view. But for us, it took us a while to lock down the process of making VPS work correctly. It involved photographically scanning the physical environment around this waste spot, and afterwards bringing it to Maya to animate our creatures on top of it. But after locking down our process and workflow, I think we're able to seamlessly produce these type of experiences.
Cool. So thinking about how you experience VPS or location-based AR in the real world, what sorts of challenges does that present for the user experience? Like, how do you think about UX for real-world AR?
Showing people where to go and how to get there. What I know for me, again, I'm not a developer. I don't really know how to code these things. And so visually, I started by researching a lot of geolocation games that were blockchain games. And a lot of them have similar, like Pokemon Go, they have the 2D map. And so being able to show the user, okay, this is where you need to go, this is where you are, and this is where you need to go. And being able to create that design to where there's like a pin or a point of interest somehow, and they're able to, as they're moving, it's relative to their position, finding what they need to scan, and then also showing them visually, this is the thing that you need to scan. And so whether it's including like a video, like a demo, or an image somehow, those were some of the challenges that we had faced. But we actually were able to solve those problems at the AR house. We all kind of took pictures of it and then put it within our respective apps. So yeah, that was probably one of the biggest.
Yeah, one thing I would also add for VPS UX is during the summit, they had very distinct point of interest. So the scan was able to pick up these points very quickly. I think for us, within a few seconds. But at AR House, sometimes it took 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and the way to resolve this is to really move around this wave spot and try to get every nook and cranny to have a successful localization. So I think we need to build this into the UX experience where either we make a video or a GIF showcasing to walk around this object. And the other part is, like Shirley said, having multiple wave spots, because how do you guide a player from one spot to another spot? And for us, we actually did a map system where we just highlighted several spots you had to walk to, and the map acted as a GPS signal to find a nearby area. And then from that point on, just have an image of what you're to look for, and have this scanning motion to pick it up. So.
Yeah, those are definitely like some pretty difficult challenges. I think the other one that I've been thinking about lately, so with VPS, you know where the player's device is, like in six DOF space. And the kinds of games that I think that could potentially unlock, thinking back to with smartphones, like Angry Birds was super popular. They had like a super simple mechanic, like pull the slingshot back and then shoot your Angry Bird. And maybe it'd be fun knowing the 6th off position of your phone. Like you could create a bow and arrow kind of Hunger Games type thing where you have your slingshot and you pull your phone back. But then the UX component is, if I do this, would I then drop my $1,000 iPhone? There's some of these UX behaviors and patterns of hey, maybe there is something cool about physically, having some basically motion controller movement, but then also remembering you're out in the real world, there's concrete there, you're doing this on a mobile device, not hand controls. So there's also those UX considerations to think about.
Cool. I have a bunch more questions, but I also would love to solicit any questions from the audience. If there's anything you'd like to ask our panel, there's a microphone here, or if you raise a finger, we can also walk a microphone to you. So I'll give folks just a second if you'd like to ask. Yeah, go ahead.
Quick question. You just mentioned hand controls. Are you going to sell a hand controls accessory for the phone at some point?
For Ingress specifically, we're not looking into it. I know Niantic has other accessories that they do have. For Pokemon Go, I think it's the Pokemon Go Plus is kind of a Bluetooth accessory. So very possible, but we don't have any plans to do so on Ingress.
Hi, Sultan Sharif with MIT Reality Hack. We'd love to work with you guys. I'm curious, how in terms of adoption, right? You guys. There's a lot of web-based stuff, but building stuff in terms of a unique app, right? And then you have to get people to download it. So I'm curious if you all could speak to I feel like we're at this moment where as we move to a lot of things being web-based, it'll open up sort of access in a lot of different ways. And so I'm just curious if you guys could speak to that moment, how much are we trying to get people to come to our specific page, or just have something that people are walking around and they can discover? How do we promote that additional discovery outside of people who already have downloaded our app or our platform, et cetera?
I could probably speak a little bit to that. So in terms of how VPS can be accessed today, We just announced at our summit last week, John Hanke talked a little bit about the concept of what he calls snackable AR. So you could have an AR experience, including an AR experience that uses VPS, that actually runs on the browser of your phone. So like no download, you just like go to a web page, it says like, hey, look at this thing. You point your device at it, and it actually builds you can have a persistent AR experience that runs in the browser, which is fabulous. And that's been made possible with a lot of our work with our new partners at Eighth Wall, who, as you heard earlier, like joined us a couple months ago. And one of the cool things about web AR is that can actually be an on-ramp to an application experience. So you could have sort of like a little snackable experience of like, oh, this is really neat. It's like, if you like this, there's actually this app that opens up an entire world on top of that. And that is really nice because it removes a lot of friction. Like, because if you go out to a location, it's like, oh, if you want to have this experience, like I for one, like hate it if I go to a restaurant. It's like you need to download our app to order, and it's like, are you kidding me? So if you need to download like a 1 gigabyte app and you don't have like a fast data plan, that's a showstopper. So having like a quick experience that is just a couple megabytes that you can just have or less that just run on your phone, and then have a link. It's like, hey, if you like this, you can download this later, and then do all these other things as well. So it provides a really quick on-ramp to understanding the value of something in a way that's really tangible. And as John mentioned, we haven't said exactly when yet, but VPS will be available through Web AR on Eighth Wall as well. So there'll be sort of two different avenues for development. Either we're running in the browser or running natively on Lightship ARDK if you wanted to have a native app for iOS or Android. But also just curious if any of our panelists have any thoughts on using Web AR for experiences and how that's different from the development that I believe you all have been focused on using the Lightship ARDK.
Yeah, I actually have experience with this because that's kind of what I based my exhibition on for school, because it was no code based. And so I used a website called MyWebAR. And for me, it's a lot less friction. You just go to the website, the URL, bam, they're in the experience. I also believe too that, social media is so powerful, and like every social platform has some sort of AR thing, right? Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. And so creating AR experiences or like a small snippet, whether it's a filter or something, you're kind of meeting the audience where they're at. And so you can create a small little filter experience, like a bite size, that will be a traffic lead to the overall app for them to download something. So like, I don't think it's which platform do you want to, let's use all of them. Like, let's use all of them, and then essentially in Unity is where, and using Lightship is where you're actually creating the overall. But you can still do stuff on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all of these places. So that's my opinion there.
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about that Super Bowl ad, there's that like bouncing QR code from Coinbase. Like you go to restaurants, there are QR codes on the table, and then like in some very smart Niantic person's brilliant marketing, like the back of your badge, like this is Web AR. Like the fact that I don't need to download anything, I can scan this little QR code and then see an immersive experience. Like for Ingress, I'm super excited about using these as kind of like your movie trailer or your AR trailer into, if you like this, now download the game. Like here's your little taste, but if you want the real thing, it's gonna cost you. Come in, download our app on App Store. But this, I think, is a great way to like get people, their entry point into trying something out that just works with Chrome, works with your default browser.
Yeah. For us, we're planning to look at WebXR as a correlation with our application. So for example, if we enable VPS on WebXR, you can collect the item in a physical environment, and then we're going to connect it to our database, which will let you load certain items onto your digital avatar on our mobile application. So it's like a gateway from the web to do certain activities and connect it to our main application.
Cool. We are just about out of time, but we do have like time for like one more question that from the audience, or I can ask my last question. I see someone. Go ahead.
Thank you. So my question has to deal with how do you deal with who owns the space when you use your VPS to sort of map an area. What's to say that I, as an independent person, can't come in and override a company's use of that space?
Ooh, that's a fun question. I'll take that one. So what we are initially focused on at Niantic is building one shared map. And I think that's kind of analogous. If you've done any geospatial development or are familiar with like OpenStreetMaps, for example, or Wikipedia, what we're focused on is like one shared map that everyone can use. So it's not one private map for this customer, one private map for this customer, but rather it's one shared set of information, just like you were using like an OpenStreetMaps like tiling service to be able, like anyone can use the same base layer of information to build your own experiences on top of, and then what gives you control over that experience is whatever your application is, whether it's web AR application or a Lightship application. So that's what we're focused on for now, and I think that is probably going to also feed well into our goal of having an incentive to contribute to the map because you benefit from everyone else's contributions. Was there one more question here in the front? Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to know about the integration of 8th Wall into Niantic and WebXR.
Oh, so I'm not an authority on that, but I do believe there are several talks about 8th Wall at this conference. I can tell you, like, basically the way actual VPS works is it is somewhat agnostic to what is calling it, and in terms of today, you can access it directly with the Lightship ARDK, and soon, and Tom will kill me if I say when, but soon you will be able to also directly access VPS through the web with the tools that 8th Wall will be making available. Yeah, and I guess very last thing before we close, I just wanted to ask each of our panelists, like what is one piece of advice that you would give to a fledgling location-based AR developer, like in terms of like just something that happened to you that you learned from, or like a great place to get started?
I know for me it's just like make something that you would want to use. Like make something that's fun, because like for me, I lean into my curiosity, and whatever's fun and something that I know I would value, that's what I would suggest. Just do something that you're interested in.
Yeah, kind of just echo that, find the fun. There's a lot of hard challenges of like who owns these things or these other privacy concerns, but it doesn't matter if you don't get players actually use your service. And one question that we ask ourselves as a team is, what can we ship that our players will thank us for building? And that kind of is our driving force of like, here's how we approach product development.
Yeah, I share these same thoughts. Basically, I use VPS on your private location at home because once you see the effect of it and the power of it, it opens up so many ideas and creative thoughts.
Cool, and then one final plug for me, again, totally free to use, play around with. If you just go to lightship.dev, you can make an account and start playing with it today. And if you're having problems, we'd love to hear about it, because we are learning with you during our public beta. I wanted to say an enormous thank you to our panelists, Shirley, Brian, and John. I'm Tory, and thank you all so much for being here.
Thanks, guys. Actually, before you go, I have your host over here has a couple comments and a quick question.
Okay.
So, Brian, regarding the slingshot game concept, and you were mentioning dropping the iPhone and all that, on the Magic Leap, there was Angry Birds, and it was built by Resolution Games, the Swedish developer. It was an amazing slingshot AR implementation. Regarding the national parks, I was at REI, I led spatial there, and one of my proof of concepts was using the USGS placards as marker-based ways to invoke AR, and even a way to do that offline. So if you loaded the park up beforehand. And the question for you, Tory,
All right.
is once you scan spaces, and I walked out of the room for just a second, so in case you mentioned this, sorry, but once spaces are scanned, can users download them? Like I was a power user of display.land from Ubiquity 6. I don't know if anybody checked that out. It was a really cool, right on, I guess you did. So they had the feature where you could download the 3D that you captured and then import that into Blender. Will there be something like that for VPS?
Yes. Great question. We're going to get a little bit in the weeds, so bear with me. When you do a scan, it's, as I mentioned, this is just like what we call like a recorder V2 format. So it's a series of frames from your device. They're all tied together with tracking information. And then we do a bunch of processing on that. And there's a couple different kinds of assets that we can create from that. There is one type of asset which we call a mesh. So that is the 3D model. That can be created with the Wayfair app that I was talking about. We also have another application that's totally free, available on the App Store today for iOS, and soon will be available for Android as well, called Scaniverse. That application actually will build a 3D mesh right on your device, and you put that in a Sketchfab, put it in a Unity editor, super friendly. That actually helps support a lot of our developers during our private beta. Separately, if you use the Wayfarer beta app, we actually build a mesh on our server. And then if it's a private location, like next to your house or something like that, you can actually, as soon as the map is built, you can download the mesh. The other asset that is created when we create the map, when we say map, we're usually talking about, it's not a human readable thing, it wouldn't mean anything to us, but is the mapping that tells you exactly where you are based on the image that you show us. So that's not something that you download, that's something that you query, and then that just gives you your location back. So that's basically how that works. And in the future, it will also be possible for a developer to say like, oh, I want to build an experience at this location, and without even having to go there, you'd be able to understand what the location looks like, where it is, what it's called, and see a 3D model of it. And that actually creates sort of a scaffold upon which you can craft all these different AR experiences. And I will be the product manager for that, so I'm allowed to talk about it. But that's something we're really excited about, because like one of the big challenges about building real-world experiences is scale. Because if you build a VR experience, you just ship it everywhere because you built the world. But we don't have control over the real world that much. We're at the mercy of what the real world is. So if you wanted to build an experience, and like, great, I made it work at one place, but now I want to make it work at 10,000 places. Like rather than one developer having to travel to 10,000 places, we are going to build tools that will enable you to just understand and like just start building on top of that area, just like you were looking at a map and you just started drawing on top of it. So that is what is coming soon, and is going to be really critical for making your experiences that you build more scalable, so you can develop something here and then deploy it to a location in Japan or Egypt or Turkey like the next day. Yeah, so great question.
Very cool, thank you. Let's hear it again for them.